Hello and welcome to the India Hangout. A hotel in Calcutta has reportedly denied Suzette Jordon entry into the hotel for being allegedly a Park Street rape victim. The question that, however, we are asking today is, why is it that we continue to face a social stigma on issues like this, and with people who are clearly victims of a situation, in this case crimes against women? To discuss that, I am joined by Namita, Bhandare, gender editor of the Hindustan Times, Harish, Iyer, an equal rights activist, Cinderella Prakash, a social activist, and also Suzette Jordon, the survivor of a rape case, and also runs a non-profit called the Survivors for Victims of Social Injustice out of Kolkata. Thank you all for joining us. So before we start, Suzette, may I ask you to sort of quickly take us through what happened and then your reactions to the event that happened in Calcutta on Monday?
It was a Saturday evening, say around about 11:30. My fiance and I decided to, go to this place for dinner and drinks. It's a resto bar, and it's about 25 minutes from my home. But anyway, we got to the place, and there was a line of people there. So like any other normal person, we waited. I was waiting in line while my fiance parked his vehicle, and he came to me. And then when my chance came to get in, I was approached by the bouncer, who told me I couldn't enter. So I asked him very politely. I said, why aren't you allowing me to get in? And he said to me, I'm sorry, I'm just getting you the manager. The manager comes out, and I asked him the same thing. I said, why are you stopping me from entering? He just looks at me with this deliberate look in his face, and he says, you are that Park Street victim, and I cannot allow you in. I was shocked. I didn't know how to respond because he said it out loud, and there were others, about 10 to 20 of them, waiting to get inside. Not only that, there were others walking out and in from the resto bar who came out for smokes and, just normally getting in, people going in and coming out. And here was this manager who spoke out loud to me with no respect. And I asked him again, I said, are you sure? Do you even realize what you're saying to me? And he says, yeah, you're that Park Street girl, and I cannot let you in under the management orders. And I said, excuse me, I said, I'm here with my fiancé. You insult me. You insult him in front of all these people, and you don't even realize it. He says, no, he says, but you can come with your fiancé, you can come with your husband, father, brother, and it really doesn't matter. I cannot allow you in because you are that Park Street rape victim.
Right. Suzette, has something like this happened before? It's been 2 years since the incident happened, but has this ever, have you encountered something like this before?
Well, not at all, because in the recent months, since I've been trying to get back to a normal life, in the recent months, I've been going to a lot of restaurants, and nobody has ever done this to me. In fact, they just treat me like any other normal customer goes in, or a normal guest would go in to dine. And that's it. And in fact, even after my incident, I have faced ostracization. I have faced people, stigmatizing me, but never to this extent where they've actually come up to my face and boldly told me, you are the Park Street rape victim or anything of that sort. They have passed remarks quietly, or they've hushed, or they've whispered, but not as brazen as this manager.
And since then, I mean, just to bring matters up to the present, after the present, has anything happened? Has the restaurant got back to you, or the management got back to you?
No, that's the surprising part, because they show no remorse or repentance for what they've done. The owner of the restaurant is supporting his inhuman manager's despicable behavior. They're saying that I was there the last time, which in fact true, I was there a couple of months back with my fiancé, which is what I feel was when they recognized me, and of course made it very clear this time when I went that I couldn't enter because I was the Park Street rape victim. They seem to say that I have outstanding bills, and there are different versions to what the owner has to say.
Right. So we did try and reach the restaurant, but we haven't been able to do that. But we've also seen some of their versions of the same incident. But Suzette, we are not getting into that because that's not really why we are having this discussion today. Our idea is to understand why do we see this kind of problem, and maybe, as you said, it's not just in the restaurant but elsewhere, but not in the same intensity. And of course, what can we do to solve this? So I'm going to come back to you in a moment. Namita, what's your sense? I mean, why are we seeing this kind of reaction, where we see this kind of reaction, and even whether or not it happened in this form in Calcutta, it's surely happening in many other forms in other places in this country.
Absolutely. Just, Govind, before I get started, just a correction. I'm gender editor of Mint, which is, of course, a sister publication of Hindustan Times, but just to set that right. I am actually not surprised at all. Shocked and sad, yes, at what allegedly happened. And I wish actually somebody had come from Ginger Restaurant, because I would have loved to have asked, what kind of thinking is this in a modern metropolis, in one of the big cities? I can understand if it was in a village, if it was in a small town, but this kind of, you're the Park Street rape victim or rape survivor, whichever word they used, as an insult or as a humiliation. I mean, how does this even work? And I know in some of my past interviews, I interviewed a while ago a young schoolgirl in Haryana, who I am in touch with. She was gang raped also. And when I met her about 6 months later, because I'm in touch with her, we were chatting and she told me, she said, I feel very happy when you come to visit me. So I said, why? So she said, because this is the first time I can smile. She said, because when I walk out on the street in my own mohalla, because she has a legal case going and her community is supporting her. But even despite that support, they expect a certain kind of behavior from her. She's expected to be sad. She's expected to have her head hanging down. She says, if I smile in the marketplace, everybody stares at me and says, "Are dekho kitni besharam hai, ye has rahi hai." It's as if we expect that if a woman who's been raped has had such a horrible fate that she does not have the right to even smile or to go out for dinner, as Suzette did. And Suzette, I think, makes people uncomfortable because she defies every stereotype of what a rape victim is supposed to behave like. She is determined to be happy. She's extremely outspoken. She's very articulate, and more strength to her and more power to her for that. But she makes a lot of people very uncomfortable, including what I would normally call emancipated people or enlightened people, because she doesn't fit into any box of how we expect our rape victims to behave.
Okay, so Harish Iyer is here. Harish, you're an equal rights activist and you face this situation too. So, would you go along with what Namita says? Basically, the bigger problem is that Suzette is refusing to fit into the stereotype of someone who sort of goes into a little box once something like this happens.
Forget about women. Even I am a male survivor of child sexual abuse. The way they slot me in different compartments and they expect me to cry on every show that I go to. They expect me to not laugh, and so I think it cuts across the whole this thing. You expect rape victims to be rape victims. You need to have swollen eyes. You don't have the right to be happy. You have to be always upset. And secondly, everything that you say, we have this horrible word that we have invented in the English dictionary, which is alleged. Now, I don't understand a reason, while I understand the compulsions of the legal system, but that word by itself is so demeaning. Why would Suzette Jordon get up and go to a restaurant bar and then file a police complaint against that person? What? I mean, she gets enough media attention even otherwise for a tragedy. I think we are a country which loves tragedy porn. And we simply don't, when we speak about, we always treat women as, victims as a cause and not as human beings, and I think that's the main problem that we face. We always make them a cause, and we fit causes into certain stereotypes. And whether it's about a woman survivor, whether it's about a man who was sexually abused, it doesn't matter. You are expected to behave in a certain manner, and what Namita said was 100% right. That if you don't behave in that manner, it makes you very uncomfortable, and you doubt. You make their whatever they are saying, the verbatim, a story. You suddenly move into this phase where you start telling people that probably she's making a story. How can she be so happy? Because you want people to break down on TV sets and stuff like that.
Right. Suzette, let me come back to you. And that's I mean, that does sort of strike a chord. You know, do people really want you to be seen as someone who's on the back foot, who's suffering, who's in some ways not getting out of the shell perhaps you were supposed to be consigned to or condemned to?
Well, of course, the way he spoke to me and the look that he had on his eyes were, clearly said to me, like, you are the Park Street rape victim. In other words, like, you have actually survived the rape. You should be lucky, thankful, grateful that, you're alive. Why don't you just stay back at home and hide out for the rest of your shameful life? And, because you are an abomination to the very existence of mankind.
Got Cinderella Prakash, another social activist out of Mumbai. Cinderella, what's your sense? I mean, I know you also are actively involved in the cause for highlighting the problems faced by women who are subject to a crime such as these.
Yes, that's right. Actually, I completely agree with what Harish was saying. It's like whatever we've been through, as if that wasn't enough, the society that we live in ceases to treat us like human beings. Either they put us on a pedestal expecting us to be perfect, or they completely want to just walk all over us, expecting us to be crying and weeping all the time. I don't know why we as a society are regressing. I don't know why we want to dwell on the past. Even when we want to forget it, even when we want to move on, even when we want to live our lives and do things about it, they just don't want to get out of it, and that's pretty sad, I would think. I don't know what joy we get out of behaving like lunatics, to be honest. I think it's
Cinderella, have you faced a situation,
oh, yes, I have.
Anything like, yeah, go ahead.
It wouldn't be similar to what Suzette has faced before, but what has definitely happened is post appearing on Satyameva Jayate, post talking about what I went through so publicly. The one thing that happened is I received a lot of breakbacks. There were even people who were sending me death threats, for that matter. People telling me that, if you go out if you go out in the open. And to my surprise, these were people who are much older. The youngsters were really walking out there and writing to me and calling me and saying that go for it, go for the cause, and we're with you. And the older people were the ones who were cursing me and telling me, why am I opening my mouth even? I think that's what I face, at least.
Harish, you wanted to say something, and then I'm going to go back to Namita. Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing, even after I was there in Satyameva Jayate, people would either put me on a pedestal or either people would completely expect me to be one of the stereotypes. And there are these normal things that people do, like I go to a bar and I drink. Okay, Suzette is not a drunkard, but even if once she goes to a bar and if she drinks or if Cinderella drinks, the whole thing is how can survivors of such a gory crime be so happy? How can they lead a normal life? So even if we do a simple thing like going to a bar, you go to a bar and drink, people will not look up to you, look down on you saying that, oh my God, how can you drink? Yeah. So these all are very small things. I received, because I was the one who put in Suzette's statement on Facebook, and I started receiving a lot of flack from people saying that she's very happy, she goes about telling everyone, so what if someone called her a Park Street rape victim? I said that doesn't define her. She has got much more to her life, and she didn't go there to a TV studio as the Park Street rape victim. Yeah. And there are people saying that I've seen her drinking over here, and from where? I mean, you have never been to Calcutta, but you go to Calcutta and you see something like that. Yeah. So there is this stigmatization that we as a whole, even people who worship her, are doing the biggest sin, because she doesn't want to be, she just wants to become more human like you and me.
Right, and I think that's a good point. And Namita, the other, I think Cinderella mentioned, it's an important and perhaps interesting point as well. Is this a generational issue as well, or is it mostly a generational issue that people from younger generation easier to accept, adapt and treat each other as equals, whereas the older generation clearly seems to have a problem, or is it something that is...
Well, I would hope so. I would hope that there has been some progress within a generation. But if you really look, if I take you back for a minute to the partition,
Sure.
and you had incidents and accounts of thousands, literally tens of thousands of women being thrown into wells and being drowned by their own families, rather than facing the horror of being raped by somebody from the other religion. I don't know which was worse, being raped by somebody from another religion or being raped at all. So they would rather, because, you know, in a patriarchal society, the whole idea of honor and of women being the repository of that society's honor is something I fear we've not really moved. We've not made very much progress towards, you know, from that concept. And I sympathize with Harish, but I cannot even imagine, because even a lot of feminists do not acknowledge the fact that men are also victims of rape or victims of sexual abuse. We don't even acknowledge that. So we've not even begun that conversation. At least with women, we've begun the conversation, and we're questioning things. Should we be using the word victim, or should we be using the word survivor? Why shouldn't, you know, and I've spoken to so many enlightened people, young people as well. And, you know, I'll give you a small example, and this may be a politically incorrect thing to say under the present circumstances, but if you remember the Nirbhaya case and the kind of outrage, and I've often wondered, why did it attract this kind of level of outrage, you know, across India? And part of the reason was, of course, the brutality and the horror of what she was subjected to, but part of it was also because she fitted into a narrative of the good girl, you know, the aspiring, hardworking student. Whereas someone like, say, Suzette, with all due respect, does not fit into that narrative. If you remember, even when this crime was first reported in 2012, there was a lot of questioning. I remember reading, oh, why was she there? She's a divorcee. She's a mother of two. So the subtext was something that just instantly, and even now, I was just before coming on to the show, I was looking at some of the social media chatter, and, you know, people asking stupid questions. Why was she going out for dinner at 12 o'clock midnight? None of your business. Nobody asks men this question. And she has a right to live. And she has a right to be happy. I think we need to move away from this whole idiotic notion of somehow that a woman, I think, you know, maybe, I've not been raped, so I cannot really speak on from that experience. But maybe we need to treat rape as just a horrible crime. But that's it. It's like being knocked down by a bus. You know, at the end of the day, you're knocked down by a bus, you're traumatized, you're injured, you're brutalized, but you get up and you pick up the pieces of your life and you go on living. We don't expect rape victims to do that. We say that, oh, if you've been raped, this is the end of your life. You cannot smile, you cannot be happy, you cannot go out for dinner, you cannot have a relationship. You just are that victim forever and ever.
Right. So, Suzette, let me come back to you. I think what we were trying to do in this discussion also to say, how do we fix this? I mean, what happened to you in Calcutta is obviously a one-off, and we wish and pray it now doesn't happen to you ever again. But if we are to sort of improve the sensitization of the people we interact with and deal with, where do we start, and how do we go about it?
We just have to start by firstly being human to one another and changing the very mindset that people live by. No matter how hard we try, because we are trying to create awareness. We are trying to have these protests. We are debating about it on a regular basis. We're having programs. We're having training centers that even teach girls and guys, you know, to respect each other in a certain way. And there is no change, whatever you say, because you can see, one would imagine after so many rape cases and deaths of little girls and teenagers, there would be a different change of mindset and, you know, the hypocritical way of thinking. But that doesn't seem to happen. So there's a long way before there's a change.
Right, and you have an organization called the Survivors for Victims of Social Injustice, Suzette. So what are you specifically doing there at this point?
Well, I used to be there. Now I'm with other NGOs. But the main reason for Survivors of Victims of Social Injustice was to help survivors of rape or domestic violence, or, you know, teenagers that run away and they need counseling, to guide them, to help them. So when they reach out, they know that they have a strong support system that they can rely on.
Right. Cinderella, what's your sense? I mean, you know, if we are to, I know this is a vast ocean and we cannot boil it overnight, but what are the kind of areas that people like us in media or others should be doing or talking about to ensure that the larger problem of stigma or the response that we have, particularly in a country like India, is addressed?
I think to begin with, we need to start when they're young. Right from the men and the women, the girls and the boys, we need to start talking to these children at a young age. The moment they start understanding the difference between a girl and a boy, the moment they start understanding what bodies mean and stuff like that, I think at a young age we need to start talking to them about these things and just drilling it into people's heads that no matter what the sex, we are all human beings. No matter what we go through, we are all human beings. No matter what pain, what agony, what joy, what sorrow, life is just going to be about up and down. But I think that awareness has to begin immediately, right from the schools to colleges to hospitals, and talking to these people. Extremely important is what I would think. That's just, but even that, I think even the result of that, the consequence will only show in the next generation. It's going to be a long fight.
I think we need something like a rounded approach. There is no one size, one formula that would fit in. Whether it's about the judicial system, whether it's about the police, though we have laws and we have laws and we have more laws, but it doesn't really help if they are not sensitized. So everyone, for that matter, journalists, you know, the way they report, there has to be has to be some
telling me that the problem is with the word allegation. I mean, alleged and allegation. It automatically seems to cast a suspicious.
So there could be. I mean, English is a big language, so you could find another word probably. So right from finding right words to the police, to the journalists, to schools, to start sex and sexuality education. Okay, though one might argue that it's about power and it's not about sex or sexual urge for that matter. But irrespective of that, we need to teach people. And it's not about teaching people to respect women, put them on a pedestal. Okay, nothing of that is going to work. If they are equal beings, we need to treat them as equal beings.
Right.
So putting women or putting men in different different segments and telling them that this is where you belong might not be the right thing to do. Of course, you need to respect all human beings, and it's a rounded approach. Police, public, civic authorities, politicians, the way our politicians think, it puts the whole country in jeopardy.
Right. Okay. So the question we started out by asking is that is this India's losing battle against sexual abuse? In the sense, are we? Is it an unending battle? Are we?
I think things will get better, but as long as human beings exist, okay, though it might be very harsh and it might seem very difficult to digest, I think human beings will keep abusing other human beings.
Okay.
Okay.
Suzette? Question we're asking is really where we started. You know, is this a losing battle against sexual abuse and the way people view this problem?
Well, it's not a losing battle, definitely not, because I am one of the survivors, and there are thousands like me who are reaching out and wanting to be heard and wanting to fight their battle. So, but I think it's still going to take a lot of time before finally there is a change of mindset and that perspective towards survivors and victims of domestic violence or of rape.
Right. So, Cinderella, do you want to come in on that?
I couldn't exactly hear what Suzette was saying.
The question, our theme was, is this a losing battle? And as Suzette says, or Harish is saying, it's not a losing battle, because obviously people like you are coming out and speaking up and fighting, and media has also been picking up at least the recent instances, and therefore it looks like things are not going to be as bad. But what's your feeling?
I think two things. What I think. Number one, India didn't win its freedom overnight, nor are we human beings going to win our freedom and our acceptance or our validation overnight. It's going to be a long battle, not a losing battle, not an unending battle, but definitely a long battle. I think number two, what I believe is every battle has freedom fighters who sometimes down the line just lose their lives for a cause. And we will pay the price that way, I would think. There are a bunch of us who are standing out in the open, who are shouting from the rooftops about these causes. Somewhere down the line, there is a lot that we're losing as well, but that's fine. Just bring it on.
Right. I think very well spoken, Cinderella. Namita, let me come to you for the wrap on this. I mean, what's your sense? Is this a losing battle? Is as long as humans are the way we are, particularly in our country, or are you seeing the first signs of things turning around?
First, second, and third sides too. I share my co-panelist's optimism. I mean, let me take you back to December 15th, 2012. We weren't even prepared to talk about rape. We would call it all kinds of things. We'd call street sexual harassment eve teasing. And in a short span of less than 2 years, we are now having conversations. We have a tougher law. I mean, these are all signs forward. You cannot, I agree with Harish, human beings will always abuse human beings. But at least today you have tougher laws. I'm not saying the laws are perfect. We are refusing to recognize, for instance, marital rape. We certainly need to talk about male rape much more than we do, because it is much more prevalent than that. But what used to 2 paragraphs is today front page news. You have Vishaka guidelines being talked about. Suddenly everybody waking up. The Vishaka guidelines have been there for a decade. Suddenly corporates are waking up and saying, do we have committees in place? And companies are scrambling to put. So look at the way the workplace is changing, the way the conversation is changing. And of course, the main change that has to come is that, we have the laws, maybe not perfect, but we do have the laws. But governments cannot tell us how to bring up our children. Ultimately, we as parents need to know that we need to bring up our sons without a sense of entitlement, as we do now, and we need to allow our daughters to live. You look at female feticide, we don't want to talk about it because it's not sexy, so we don't talk about it. But we're stamping out sexism, and it's not just sexual abuse comes from sexism, isn't it? That's the root. And unless you stamp out sexism, you cannot ultimately stamp out the problem, but you can to a large extent, I think, alleviate it. And I think we've made huge progress in the months since Nirbhaya's horrible crime.
Right, Namita. Yeah, Harish, last word. Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing that I would like to say is that pain is a great binder. Everyone, for that matter, all survivors of sex abuse, we all are connected. I mean, Suzette, myself, and Cinderella, we all are friends. So somehow or the other, if we all get together and we build in a force, there will be a better future.
Yeah, and I think as Cinderella said, every movement you need some freedom fighters, and thank you for all joining in, sharing your experiences, and most importantly, leaving an optimistic note that things will change in coming days. Thank you all for joining us on the India Hangout. We'll be back again same time tomorrow. Thanks for watching.